Hello, this is Khaliq Glover, and you know me also as Khaliq-O-Vision. And I wanted to give you a quick overview of some EQ ranges and key frequencies. I think these things will kind of help you keep it in the front of your mind. It's probably something that you already know or have heard about, but it's always good to keep reminding you what some of these areas cover and what they do so that you can apply them and have them foremost in your mind as you go to record and mix any of your projects. So we all kind of know that the human hearing frequency range is from 20 hertz all the way out to 20 kilohertz. And what that means, if you don't know, 20 hertz is the low end, the super low sub bass. And then 20 kilohertz, you'll see the 20 and a little K after it. That's the super high end. That's kind of the range of our hearing from the super low to the super high. You know, sound does definitely go above that, but as far as what we can hear, it's usually within that range for most human beings. You know, dogs and things like that, dolphins or whatever can hear well above that, hear some high frequencies that we'll never hear. And whales and elephants, for example, hear some low sub-bass frequencies that we'll never hear. You know, they can hear things from miles around. Our hearing is pretty much within that area. So let's start and think about like what runs through the sub-bass area. Well, the sub-bass, I would say, goes from the very bottom, which is 20 hertz, up to around maybe 60 hertz. So in that area, the sub-bass, that's where that real low rumble, chest thump, so where AC is at 60. And, you know, a lot of noise and rumble can come into that signal in that area. So a lot of times it's very helpful for most instruments to simply filter out all that stuff. You know, you're pretty much safe if you put a real steep filter somewhere around like 35, 40, or even higher depending on, you know, what. But if you want to get out the real low crud out of your sound, put a filter on anything other than, say, the kick drum and the bass. Okay, the next range is the actual bass itself, where the fundamental tones are basically making you aware of what the bass instrument is doing or what a low instrument like a kick drum does. And that'll run from, 60 and continue on up between 60 to 250, with 100 being kind of a good general area where a lot of fundamental bass tones travel anywhere in that area. If you look on meters and spectrum analyzers and you look for the bass tones, you'll see it, but you'll usually see them running between 60 and that 250 area, with most of the lowest energy is going to be around 60, 70 in that area for like kick drums and stuff like that. Basses and stuff like that are usually going to be, going up anywhere dwelling from the 80s through 100 up to like 160, 200, or whatever you get in that area. Then you get the harmonics of each of those as well, or within that area. So sometimes if the fundamentals below the harmonic can be an octave above. Okay, then the mid-range will pick up again from like, say, 250 to about 2K. The K, like I said, is the kilohertz. So once that gets up in there, that's where your fullness comes. That's where the mid-range, every instrument pretty much goes through the mid-range at some point. Even the lowest instruments run through there, and the highest instruments usually come down through there at some point. So we have to be careful. A lot of times the mid-range will need to be cut on a lot of things to make room, or else you'll have mud, or you'll get this weird honky sound and everything. Once you get up towards the upper mid-range level, like around 1K, between 1 and 2K, that's when things can get real funny and tinny. That's where that radio or telephone sound exists. That's also where you can get some whack from like snare drums and things like that. But you got to be careful because, like I said, that area can get irritating and tinny. Then right above that, the mid-highs start, so around 2K, going up to about 6K. Between 2 and 6K is where you get the high mids. And that's where a lot of things like crunchiness, edge, definition, and things like that where you can make things stand out a little bit, or if something's kind of irritating and you need to get it out of the way of other things that need to speak a little more, you can probably cut areas in that to make some other things stand out. That's the mid-high area, and that's a very, very touchy area, because if you overdo it on too many instruments, it can get very irritating. That's kind of the area where most humans are most sensitive. You know, vocals go through that area a lot, as far as a lot of the vocal sound that we hear for the clarity and everything. That's the area that speaks to us, and it can either be irritating or it can be very pleasant sounding, depending on just how clear that area is. And then above it, 6K and up to the 20K, you've got the high frequencies. You know, that's where you start getting that real definition or piercing sounds. And way up above, once you start getting up around 14, 15, 16K and above, that's where the air starts creeping into the sound too, to make something kind of have life. You know, a lot of times you can add the air up there for vocals and make them just seem a little more alive and speak. Or for the guitars, you can hear the air that the speaker is moving by adding some of these things. Sometimes, you know, sometimes you might want to take it away if you want something to sit back a bit. So these are just some quick tips, and this is an overview of EQ frequency ranges, and I hope this has been kind of helpful. Refer to it often to keep it in front of your mind, and just try a couple of things, boosting and cutting on different instruments, and it's a very useful thing to think about. Until next time, this is Khaliq Glover, and I'll see you on the next episode. And don't forget to check out HypnoticAudioSecrets.com.